evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Big at the Back podcast. After our hiatus of 1 week where we're certain you missed us all, we're back. And I'd like to say we're better than ever, but we're exactly the same terrible people we were beforehand. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. It's been a nice little week off where I didn't have to face sitting down and talking to you for an hour or however long we do this. But all good things must come to an end, and here we are again. I thought I'd get a nice summer break, but you pull me back in. But no, I had a nice week off. I went away to a nice little Airbnb and ate a lot of food, and I don't think I felt hungry since. So just getting back into the real world, but it's nice to be back in all seriousness. How are you? I hear you had a nice weekend.
Yeah, I had a lovely weekend. It got a bit too much by the end. Just when you have 4 days off in a row in the UK and everyone is drinking all the time and you're as silly as me, then you're drinking all the time without really any pause or any regard for your own state of well-being. And it got to the stage where I somehow had to get myself home from central London at midnight. Ended up getting an £80 Uber in the end just because I couldn't figure out how the trains work, despite taking them all my life.
It's not as though this is like uncommon ground for you. You've been commuting to London for years now.
I mean, it's also the fact that, well, actually, I think I deserve credit for not getting on the train correctly and falling asleep on the train, because that is something you and I have done plenty in the past, all the way to Shrewsbury Nest and having to cab back.
We're seasoned Shrewsbury Nest trippers.
Yeah, that's not something we should ever admit or be proud of. Right.
At least if I did it again now, it would be a closer trip home. Now that I've lived closer to Shrewsbury Nest, so it wouldn't be as bad now.
Yeah, but you still have to say you're a seasoned Shrewsbury Nesser. It's more the fact that you'd be from Shrewsbury Nest. That's something we just don't want to speak about.
No.
So, as you all know, the season has come to a close. We are doing the big season.
Has
it? I know. We're doing the big season review in a few weeks is the plan. But we thought we'd bring you some additional content because we know that no one can get enough of our terrible opinions. So we've got a special episode today. And we decided that we were going to do our teams of the season. But
well, we thought we'd make it a little bit more interesting because, as always, when you have a couple of superior teams in the league, they're going to dominate any talk of a team of the season. So we're actually going to give you 2 teams of the season. One is just a Liverpool and City team, a combined 11, and the other is the other 18. So it will be a team of the season, just excluding City and Liverpool, to give more players a chance.
Yeah, give the lower echelons of the league a chance. I think that could be a political catchphrase. No, we're not quite there yet. We're working it. Maybe we'll have it towards the end of the podcast. So I think let's start with our Liverpool and City team of the season. And we agreed earlier to do a 4-3-3 formation. So who have you got in goal for Liverpool and City?
Adrian.
Excellent. Great stuff.
No, Scott Carson. No, this one, it really is just a coin toss. It's probably a personal preference thing more than anything. I've gone with Edison because I think he's got slightly better distribution of the two, but I think that's the only really thing separating them. If you go Alisson, I don't think it's a wrong choice. It's just not my preference.
So I know they've both got 20 clean sheets this season, so they've tied for the Golden Glove. They've played the same amount of games as well. Alisson has 76 saves versus Edison's 60. And I think I could name at least 5 games where Alisson has been the reason we've stayed in it and got something out of it. So there might be the same for Edison. I haven't watched City games as closely as I have Liverpool, but I agree it is a coin flip. Just looking at the stats, I'm tempted to say Alisson. I think should be the choice, but it is one of those that is too close to call.
Yeah, I think, and to be fair, this is going to be probably a theme throughout this 11 for the most part. There's obviously the 2 very good teams. There's a couple of standout players that we're obviously going to both have, but for the most part, you're going to say, well, one doesn't necessarily deserve it over the other.
Mhm. We'll say because I can remember all of the moments of Liverpool. I'm tempted to say, let's say Alisson for this 11.
Go for it.
Then we'll move on to right back. And again, this, for me, it was a quite easy choice, but that's because I'm probably his biggest fan in the world. So I've gone Trent, naturally. I think Kyle Walker is exceptional, but Trent is the best fullback or the best right back in the league at the moment, in my opinion. So you're a bit more neutral than me on this. So what have you gone for?
No, I've gone Trent. I think he is the better of the two. He's got age on his side. I think he makes more things happen going forward. So for that reason, I think he gets the shout over Walker. You've also seen Walker playing as a centre half quite a lot this season, whether it's on the right of a three or in the two, because City have had defensive issues. So I think Trent gets that right back slot for me. So I think we can nail that one in.
Excellent. So centre backs, are we going Matip and Konate?
Yes.
Excellent. No, centre backs.
Fernandinho.
Wow.
His outstanding performance against West Ham at the penultimate week of the season.
It was Real Madrid as well. He put in quite a stellar performance there. Centre backs, I've gone Van Dijk and Laporte, which I didn't really like. The reason is they're both left-sided centre backs, and I think Matip and Konate have both had exceptional seasons. Matip in particular has been the best points per pound player on FPL this season. But I think Laporte has had too good a season not to put in there, and Van Dijk is the best centre-back in the league. So who have you gone for at the centre-back slot?
I have also gone for Van Dijk, but I have, maybe controversially because he hasn't lived up to his first season, but I've gone for Ruben Diaz. I think especially in that first half of the season, he was a reason that City had that lead that they did. Obviously struggled with injury a bit in the second half of the season as well. But I would not overlook Laporte either. Like, I think he really stepped into his own in this season. I feel like last season it was a lot of talk of Diaz and Stones, and he didn't really get as much of an opportunity. But in this season, especially with, as I keep mentioning, this injury sort of problems they had in the second half of the season defensively, he really stepped up his game and probably is quite a bit of the reason that they ended up winning the league.
I think last season when he wasn't playing, it was because he was injured for most of it as well. I think his first season at City, he was exceptional. He was injured a lot of last season, and this season he's been back to his best. I feel harsh here, but I'm going to agree with you, and I think Laporte's wonderful. But just because Diaz does play on that right side, if we're looking at the team of the season, it's only fair we look at right centre back and left centre back. So, yeah, I think let's put Diaz in there as our Van Dijk partner. Again, I think Joel Matip in the Premier League has had a wonderful season. He's been class, but I don't think you can argue with City defensively as well. Left back, this is, I think, going to be our first disagreement, because even Gary Neville was saying it at the end of the year, Robertson's the best fullback in the league by a distance, attacking and defending. So I think while Cancelo is very good going forwards, he's defensively suspect, much like Trent on the other side, actually, but Cancelo is not as good going forward as Trent. I think Robertson is overall the best fullback in the league and possibly the world. So for me, it's Robertson in that left back all day, every day.
So this is awkward because I've gone for Zinchenko.
Excellent.
No, I have. This was the one that I really couldn't make my mind up on for the longest, and it was the one that I left blank until the very end and made my decision last minute. But I did go for Robertson as well. Like you say, I think Cancelo had a really solid first half of the season, and if the season ended after, say, 20 games or something, I think it would have been Cancelo. But Robertson's second half of the season was so good, especially that last sort of 10, 12 games. He really made that left side his own. He got so many assists on the back half of the season. That's what just tipped it in his favour for me.
Worth noting as well, Robertson's attacking stats were also much better than Cancelo's for the season. So even though people think of him as not as good attacking. If you actually look at the data, he's better. So for me, I think he's the best fullback in the world, and he has been for a while, both attacking and defending. He's the complete package in it. So yeah, I think Robertson is the choice there.
No, I think, yeah, like I say, it was close. It was a very close one, but he just edges it for me.
So in the centre of midfield, because we've gone for a 4-3-3, so I've gone someone on the right, centre mid on the right, a centre mid on the left, and a holding mid. Now, in the holding mid position, oh, actually, you can go first because you've got two candidates who have both had very good seasons, Rodri and Fabinho.
I've gone for Rodri on this one. I think he was just that little bit stronger for me. He also popped up with a couple of really big goals as well, especially in that last game of the season. I think, yeah, like you said, they both had very good seasons. I just think Rodri was that little bit stronger for me overall. Fabinho, I don't think you can go wrong with him. Maybe he's probably a little bit more of your traditional holding mid, whereas Rodri does seem to do a little bit more of that box to box. I think that may even be part of the reason. Like part of that is just due to the fact that Man City seem to dominate the ball a lot more than Liverpool do. As much as you do keep the ball, there's a lot of high press and things like that. You win it higher up the pitch than City do, so you don't need that. Like that's why Fabinho has to sit a little bit more, because if they break through that press, then you need someone there. Whereas City, you can just have anyone go anywhere they want.
Yeah, I love Fabinho, but I think he really did tail off at the end of the season. And he was immense for most of the season, but then when it really counted, he really did start to tail off. And I think we suffered as a team quite tremendously because of that. And I think Rodri has had a wonderful season. And yeah, I've got Rodri as well. Even though I do love Fabinho and I think he's genuinely exceptional, I think Rodri does deserve a place there. Centre mid, one of my other slots has been Kevin De Bruyne. He won Player of the Season. We both disagree with that. We spoke about that on our last podcast, but you can't deny that his returns have been really good when he's played, particularly in that second half, and he's been the difference really between the two sides. So I think Kevin De Bruyne has a nailed slot in that centre mid. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean he was like when I said about there's a couple that were nailed on. Kevin De Bruyne is one of them, without doubt. That second half of the season in the run-in, 4 goals when I captained him. Just he gets it for that alone. Sorry to remind you of the pain.
We're not talking about that now. Go on then. The last central midfield slots. Who have you gone for?
I'm probably going to have broken the mold here a little bit because I haven't gone for a traditional centre midfielder here. I've gone for like a Garth Crooks team of the week where I've gone very attacking, and I've put Bernardo Silva in as a centre mid. Which, I mean, to be fair, I think if you're counting De Bruyne, you can sort of count Silva in that same sort of bracket. So that's what I've gone for in here. You could easily put him in that front three on either side, but I went with him in this sort of central midfield role.
So I initially wrote down Bernardo Silva as my third, but then I thought to myself, Thiago, in my opinion, is the best centre mid in the world. And also, if Pep has Thiago, Bernardo Silva's on the bench for Thiago every time.
I think, like I say, I'd say they're different types of players.
Yeah.
Thiago's more your traditional centre mid, probably a bit of a box to box in that engine room, whereas Silva is more of like an attacking mid, a number 10, potentially out on the wing. I just wanted to crowd him into the side because I think he had a very good season.
I think he is wonderful. I think Thiago was sensational, but I'm happy to go with what you think there because, yeah, Bernardo Silva has had such a good season. He's just such a wonderful footballer, and I'm annoyed he stayed at City when he was going to leave, but I'm very glad he did because he's such a joy to watch.
Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it? How it looked like he was going to leave, then all of a sudden he stayed and probably had the best season of his City career to date.
Imagine dropping him for Jack Grealish. Goodness me.
It'll happen eventually.
Maybe so. So, front three then. Go on, you go with yours.
So I think it's quite safe to say we've both got Mo Salah in our front three.
Yep.
It would be a little bit mental not to.
Agreed. He was the first name on the team sheet, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I've actually just gone for Mane and Jota as the other two.
So have I.
Oh,
Salah and Mane were both. This is annoying that we agreed on all this. Salah and Mane were both there, and then I left that like the essentially your number 9 open. And I was like, this is where both City and Liverpool. It's hard to fill this space because a lot of the time neither side plays with a traditional number 9. Yotta's not necessarily a traditional number 9. Firmino's probably the closest that Liverpool have got. Obviously, he hasn't played much this season. City have Jesus, who had a very strong last month of the season, but other than that, he's not getting in there. Then you've got Sterling's played through there quite a bit. They've had Foden as a false 9 quite a bit. I think if we're doing this in 12 months' time, that'll be Erling Haaland will be in that spot right there.
I agree, but I think even though he only played about half the games, Jota still got about 15 goals and 10 assists or something like that. And that's more than that's more than the majority of strikers got, and Jota played in half the games. I think if you're looking at the season as a whole, that's his spot. And he's deserved to get that spot, but just wish he'd have had the chance to play a bit more, really.
Yeah, it's like you say, his outputs for the limited game time he had overall is incredible, to be fair. And you'd imagine if, I don't know, you didn't have that wealth of other attacking talent, then he would have played the rest of the season. He'd have gone past 20 goals for the season, and you'd be talking him like he'd be in Golden Boot contention. But obviously, it wasn't to be. Another person, and I couldn't put him in the end just because of the other amount of talent there was, is Luis Diaz was in with the contention as well, but only signing in January. Don't get me wrong, had a fantastic few months, but just if he was there from the start of the season, he probably would have been in this team over probably Mane.
I agree. I actually would have had Mane down the middle and Diaz and Salah left and right. But you're right. I think if we're looking over the season, Jota has been better because Diaz only joined halfway through, because he was initially in mine as well, but I took him out with Jota. But I don't think any of the City forwards can really justify being in there over the Liverpool forwards. Cool. So the team is looking like in goal, we've got Alisson, right back, Trent, centre backs Van Dijk and Diaz, left back, Robertson, a City midfield with Rodri Holding, Silva and KDB either side, then a Liverpool attack with Salah, Mane and Jota. That was the boring one, and for all of the listeners that have got through that, you're about to hear Tom and Matt at loggerheads, I expect. So we're doing a best of the rest team of the season. This is going to be any and all players that have played in other 18 teams outside of Liverpool and Manchester City. Let's start with the goalkeeper, because I've got 2 names down here and I couldn't decide which one. So I'll see if you've had the same thoughts as me.
Well, I originally had one name down, and then I crossed it out. So it could be that we've got the two of the names, but they could be different. So my original name I had down was Mendy.
Okay.
But I decided to change that. Oh, we should also add a caveat here that we decided maximum of 3 players from one team, just because otherwise it could have got a little bit. So I took him out and I put Jose Sarr in as my goalkeeper. I think it was 11 league clean sheets this season, which in a Wolves side that coming in, he had big shoes to fill, or big gloves to fill, I guess, with Rui Patricio leaving last summer. I think he's come in and done a stellar job. He's bailed Wolves out in quite a few games, so that's why I just edged towards him.
Okay. So he was the second name, and he was the one I crossed out. I didn't have Mendy. The other name was David De Gea, and
I toyed with him as well.
I know, but I think he has by far and away been Man U's player of the season, and I don't think he has as many clean sheets as Sarr. I think Man U had, what was it, 9 in the end, or something like that. But with David De Gea, I think in terms of the amount of points he saved them, it was considerably more than any other goalkeeper in the league. So it's on that basis that I went David De Gea over Sarr. Sarr was the other really close one for me, but yeah, I just thought De Gea edged it for me personally.
I'd happily go with De Gea, to be honest with you. Like you say, I think it was Man U's standout player, which, I mean, when you're talking about Man U's best player of the season being their goalkeeper, what is the world coming to?
I mean, it's been like this for several years. Hasn't he won it for the last 3 or 4 years in a row in his defence? I mean, it may be because of his defence. That is more explained.
Yeah, I think it definitely is because of his defence. I think that says it all.
So, right back, Wan-Bissaka, centre back, Maguire. Shall we do our right back next? And for me, I I've gone with my FPL nemesis, Reece James. Um, if you look at what he's done this season, he's got an 86% tackle success rate. His reading of the game is really good. Chelsea have got 14 clean sheets, and he's often been part of those. He's got great attacking returns, but I think his defensive stuff is great as well. I was looking at the stats. I think he's got an attacking return on average in about 33% of his games, which is crazy for a wing back. So, yeah, I think Reece James, despite only starting half the games this season for Chelsea, does warrant his place in the best of the rest 11 for me.
Yeah, he's my choice as well. So in 33% of his games, he's got an attack and return. I assume you owned him in the other 67% of games.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. I think he was the outstanding candidate. Obviously, Trent was probably by far and away the best right back in the league, but I think James was a very strong second place there. So there weren't really many other people that came to mind in this spot.
Agreed. Two centre backs for this team. Who have you gone for?
So sticking with our big at the back theme, I had to go with one Chelsea centre half, especially that first half of the season when they were so solid at the back. So I have gone for Tony Rudiger. It was a coin toss between him and Thiago Silva, who I think both had very good seasons. I just think Rudiger was that little bit better. He's got that little bit more about his game. Obviously, he's younger. He's got more pace. So that's why I went for him over Silva. And then my second centre half is Christian Romero. You got the same name.
This is bullshit, right? This is absolute bullshit. Yes. So Rudiger, I think, is the obvious choice here. We know Rudiger's great, but yeah, I've gone Romero as well. Go on, give your explanation, you stupid, boring bastard.
This honestly makes it sound like we have spoken about this and prearranged it, but we haven't. This is the first time we're giving each other these teams. But yeah, for Romero to come in this last summer, he was probably one of Spurs' other than Kane and Son, obviously, but one of their players of the season. They a lot of the time previously they've let themselves down at the back, and that's what's cost them in big games. But I think he's really added that extra level of solidity. He's good in the air. He's good with his feet as well. He's tough to get past. So if they can sort of build their defence around him going forward, especially obviously now they're in the Champions League, they really have got a chance to kick on another level.
Totally agree. I actually think Romero is, for me, the signing of the season. I know you can talk about Luis Diaz and Kulusevski, but I think Romero, just because he came in the summer, has been wonderful. And he's really made. I think him and Conte have been he's been a player that's helped them the most get to that top four spot, in my opinion, in terms of making such a huge impact. And as much as we can talk about the other Spurs players that we can get to, I think Romero has changed the way they defend, and it's been quite excellent to be a witness to.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I say, there were some other people you could have tried to put in here. I'd have loved to have put the cat kicker in there, but I don't think that was ever going to be a case for him. I just think
Dawson. I actually considered Dawson being in there potentially.
Don't get me wrong, he had a good season, but I'd probably say there were probably other candidates above them. Even if you look at Connor Cody, for example, another Wolves player. If we look like how good they've been defensively, but Yeah, Gabriel, even Ben White at times as well, like in that early part of the season. But I think these two, over the course of the entire season, were definitely the strongest picks.
Excellent. Well, at left
So who's your left back then? If we've gone the same here, we might have done, but
I was really struggling at left back, and I've got two names down. I went with one in the end, and I've gone for a bit of a rogue pick in Cucurella. You haven't. Oh, what? Right, I'm going to change my mind then. I'm going to go for my other one. So Cucurella having the most touches outside of top 16s in the league has been majestic. But the other one I wrote down is Tyrick Mitchell for Crystal Palace, who has been excellent for them this season. He hasn't been as good as Cucurella going forward, but defensively he's been really, really good. And I think he's been remarkably consistent in that Patrick Vieira team. We spoke about it before. If you look at the way they've played and their goal difference, they can actually probably feel a bit annoyed with where they are in the league. I think the team above them and the team below them both had 19 worse goal difference than Crystal Palace did, which shows that they are performing above where they should be. And I think Mitchell is a huge part of that. He's still only a young guy. I think he's 22 years old, and he could be a future England left back. So I really like Mitchell. However, go on.
this is just disgusting, isn't it? Yeah, no. Mitchell, I think, had a fantastic season. Palace overall had a great season. That reminds me, actually, another person that I consider the centre back was Joachim Anderson.
Yeah.
I tipped Palace to go down at the start of the season when they had all their issues with the big squad turnover and an unproven manager, but what a season they had. So I'm happy to put Mitchell in there just so we go with someone else that we haven't both put down.
Yeah, like we're putting Mitchell there on account that neither of us really know what we're talking about. Cool. So we've got to wrap up. Goalkeeper David De Gea, right back James, centre backs Rudiger and Romero, and left back Mitchell. Now, three centre mid positions. Central defensive mid. Are we both agreeing that it's Højbjerg?
Yes, but that's a strange way of pronouncing Eric Dyer.
No, I think the central defensive mid, Højbjerg has had a wonderful season. This picks itself. This arguably the first name on the team sheet. Eric Dyer.
No, the thing is, I'm assuming we've both got. So we've both got Romero, and I'm assuming we may have two other Spurs players as well. So we can only have.
We are doing different teams, thank God. So we've got.
God, thank God for that.
At CDM, we've got Declan Rice. Obviously, like that's a given. He has had a sensational season this year. I think, again, for me, that was not first name on the team sheet, but it was very close to it.
Yeah, he was in the first three that I put down, I think. Obviously, as a West Ham player, I am very much probably more biased than most, but I think everyone has agreed that he's had a fantastic season. I've actually, if you see me looking over here, it's because I've got the England-Germany game on as we're recording this, and he has just made an absolutely fantastic recovering tackle. That's the sort of thing he does. He's also added a bit more going forward to his game this year in terms of driving runs and adding a few goals as well. He scored about 3 goals in our Europa League campaign, as well as a handful in the league. So he's more and more becoming a complete all-round midfielder. And I just hope we hold on to him for another year.
Yeah, I hope you do as well. I don't want to see him go to Chelsea or United. I think that would be a waste. 2 centre mid spots then, and this was a real struggle in terms of who I was looking at. So why don't you go with who you've got first in your 2 spots? Because I think we may have ended up on the same players, but
we will see, won't we? So the first one I put down, who I stuck with, is James Maddison. You haven't got him, yes. So I think even in an injury-hampered season, and obviously had the Europa Conference League, he picked up, I think, 12 goals in the league and about 8 assists as well. So very strong numbers. I think there was only a couple of people outside of the top 6 that had those sorts of attacking returns. So he was the first one I went with. And then the second one I went with, I'm going to assume you haven't gone for this one. At least I hope you haven't. I've gone for Bruno Guimaraes at Newcastle. Another one, like we spoke about not having Diaz in because he only signed in January, but I think the way he sort of transformed that Newcastle side when he came in January, he was absolutely fantastic. And I think Germany are about to score. Yes, they are.
Oh,
The flag's gone up.
we
Everyone
can
looks confused.
we can hope.
But yeah, I went for him purely because I think he sort of completely transformed that Newcastle side. He also transformed the way he plays a little bit as well from when he signed as more of sort of his standard, like a holding almost midfielder. He scored more, like he had more goals and assists in this 6 months than he did in about the previous 2.5 seasons. So it just goes to show how he's adapted his game to the Premier League. So that's why I went with him. Like I say, slightly controversial, maybe only joined in January, but I think he really made his mark in the league in that time.
Interesting. So I'm glad that the teams are looking a bit different now and they are stretching out. Because I've gone for two names that you haven't. So my first, and for me the easiest pick on this, was Mason Mount. I think with 11 goals and 10 assists, double figures for both. I think it's a really, really decent season for him. And I just think I love watching him play. I think he's a really, really top class player. He can do everything. He can defend. He can drive forward. I think he's really going to have a big season next year. And with it, it's not a bad season this year, but it was too patchy. So I'd love to see him add a bit more consistency. But I think when he plays well, he plays really well. He was actually my third Chelsea player in this squad. The other one I've gone for is James Ward-Prowse. And I think his transformation from a defensive midfielder to a box-to-box midfielder has been excellent. He's now scored 14 direct free kicks in the league, the most ever apart from David Beckham, who is with 18. He was actually the top scoring and creative pure central midfielder in the league last season, which is absolutely crazy considering some of the names there, like Bernardo Silva, etc. So I think James Ward-Prowse, for me, filled that slot. So yeah, we both went for English Jameses, but we both went in slightly different routes. So James Ward-Prowse and Mount versus Maddison and Bruno Guimaraes. Now,
so yeah, I will say Ward-Prowse was sort of the third name for me. It was between him and Bruno. I don't know why I just fancied Bruno, but I'll happily put Ward-Prowse in over Guimaraes. Overall, was there for the entire season. I've got no qualms with that at all. Then it's a coin flip between Maddison and Mount. And I think, like you say, Mount had a very good season. He double-digit returns for both goals and assists. The only reason I think I would argue for Maddison is I think Mount was a bit of a flat-track bully. He got a lot of those against poorer sides.
Yeah, I can't really remember Mount performing in a single big game. And it was frustrating. If Rodgers was a competent manager or if Maddison was fit for most of the season, I think we'd be having a very different discussion about Maddison. He's excellent. I'm happy to drop Mount for Maddison on account that Mount didn't really perform against the good teams.
Sounds good to me. So there is our central midfielder pairing of Maddison, the two English Jameses.
Yep, James Ward-Prowse and James Maddison with Declan Mice in the middle. Excellent. Now, front three, and I think the easiest name on this team sheet was Son. Wonderful season. Shared the golden boot with Mo Salah. Just the first name on the team sheet for me, and that was an absolute given. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. He's straight on there. He's been overlooked for some of the Player of the Season awards, quite disgustingly so. He was my first name on this team sheet.
Agreed, and I think his place is very locked in. So you've got Son playing on the left. On the right, I know who you'd have gone for, and I really didn't want to go the same way because I really do like the likes of Saka and a few others that can play on that right. But I think Bowen has been the best player in the right side of the front three this season, apart from the top two. 12 goals, 10 assists, double-digit returns for both. Does it against the big teams and the little teams. Picked up the slack when Antonio fell off a cliff. I think for the impact he's had this season, and I'm certain you're agreeing here, he does deserve to be in this team of the season. What about you? I assume there's no qualms with that.
Yeah, he was, again, one of the other first names on the team sheet for me. I think he had such a good season, really coming to his own. Like you say, 12 goals, 10 assists. First West Ham player to get double digits in both of those columns since Paolo Di Canio in the Premier League era. So he was my, like, probably third name on the team sheet, I think. So happy to see him get his England debut the other night. Obviously, not the result that he would have wanted, but I think he deserves his place on that sheet.
Worth noting as well the wonderful season that was had by Jadon Sancho. I'm sorry. So up top then as a striker, I think I know who you've gone for, and I'm pretty disappointed in you because Harry Kane for most of the season was dreadful. So I went Ronaldo.
You know, I was sort of tempted by Ronaldo. I was also tempted, but I was put off by the lack of game time overall of Jamie Vardy because I think that when he did play, he was very good. But yeah, I went with Harry Kane. I just think, especially the way him and Son link up, his assists. Ronaldo was very much a goal merchant this season, and don't get me wrong, that is a very good thing to have as a number 9. But I just think Kane's a more all-rounded striker, which is why I went for him.
Yeah, I do think Ronaldo basically pulled Manu out of the jaws of defeat time and time again. So for that reason, I'm quite adamant Ronaldo should be there over Kane. I think Kane's had the most disappointing season overall of the last 5-6 years compared to the high standards he normally sets. So whereas Ronaldo has had a very good season in a really, really, really bad team. So yeah, I'm quite adamant it should be Ronaldo over Kane in the team of the season here. And that's as a
Go
Liverpool.
on then. I'll let you have it. I'm feeling generous.
So if we're looking at the team overall, it's David De Gea, James, Rudiger, Romero, Mitchell, then James Ward-Prowse, Rice, James Maddison, then Jared Bowen, Heung-min Son, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, we also said we'd pick a manager for this team. So I think there were 3 candidates outside of the top 2 for manager, but then I realised that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had managed a season and he should be getting it. Thoughts?
I completely disagree. It should be Claudio Ranieri for his stint in charge of Watford.
It should definitely be Roy Hodgson just for his antics at the end of the season when Watford went down. I think the 3 outstanding candidates for manager outside of the top 2 are Howe, Conte, and Moyes. Howe for the exceptional job he's done at Newcastle, taking them from the bottom all the way up to 10th or something. And he did have money to spend, but I saw Howe and almost wrote him off because I didn't think he was very good. He has really, really been exceptional since he's come in. Conte has worked miracles at Spurs and turned them into a genuinely terrifyingly good team. And David Moyes' heroics in getting to all the way in the Europa League with such a thin squad with only one striker who was off the boil most of the season. I think for me, Eddie Howe is edging ahead based on the level of achievement. Unbiased hat on, what do you think?
I would also throw Thomas Frank's name into the hat as well because I think he did a really good job with that Brentford side. You could have easily seen them go straight back down, but they had a very strong season. He has been tipped up quite a lot by people. I think he was included on the PFA Manager of the Year shortlist as well. But I think, the 3 that you mentioned probably are the top 3. Hard for me not to be a little bit biased about it, like you say, because Moyes has been fantastic. If you look at the job he's done in the, where are we now? 18, almost 2 years since he took the job again. He's taken West Ham from surviving relegation at the end of that first COVID year by the skin of our teeth to the next year qualifying for the Europa League, and then the year after that going to the semi-finals of the Europa League and finishing 7th in the league, despite, you could argue, throwing away another Europa League spot on the last day of the season. I would probably edge toward Conte, though, out of the other two. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit bitter, but I just think Howe has had a lot of money thrown at that squad in January, bringing in the likes of Guimaraes, Trippier. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on next season. He's going to keep the job at the start of the season. Or when he came in, I thought he'd be someone that would hold the job until the summer. Then they'd go for a bigger name. But the job he's done, he will keep it. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on. You'll presume that'll bring more players in with big egos. How does he cope with that? That's why I'd just about edge towards Conte, because I think he's completely transformed that Spurs side all the way through. And to get them back into the Champions League is a big achievement.
Yeah, I mean, we've been raving about Conte for ages. I do think with Hale, though, and if we've learned anything from Manchester United, spending money doesn't guarantee success. What Howe has done is he's taken a squad that was the whipping boys, along with Norwich, of the league, and taken them from like 19th to 10th in half a season. And I think only Liverpool and City ended with a better record since Howe came in. That, despite having, and it wasn't a whole load of money as well. They spent on Trippier, but he got injured within 2 games. With Bruno, obviously, they brought in. But I think the way he spent the money and the way they've spent the money are testament to the impact he's had. And I would say that's probably a positive rather than a negative, just because they've spent correctly.
Yeah, I can understand that. And what he did with Joe Linton as well, which we've obviously spoken about quite a bit, the way he transformed him. I will put him in as the manager with the caveat that I'm going to remind you of this when he's sacked in November.
Deal. Brilliant. It's David De Gea, James at right back, then Rudiger and Romero at centre back, with Mitchell left back, James Ward-Prowse, James Maddison, and Declan Rice. Then Jared Bowen, Son, Cristiano Ronaldo, with Eddie Howe, the same age as Cristiano Ronaldo, as the manager. I have no idea if that's true. I don't know. I assume he's a young bloke, but he's probably a bit older than Ronaldo.
He is young. He retired young after his knee injury, but I think he is a little bit older than Ronaldo.
Yeah, he's taken Bournemouth up through every stage of English football, so you'd imagine he's a little bit older. Awesome. Well, that's a wrap for today. Thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll try and be back with some more fun, exciting, and engaging content next week. Matt, any last words? Wow, that's ominous.
Are you outside my house? No, obviously you can get in touch with us on Twitter. FBL Twitter is a little bit more dead at the moment. If you want to avoid the Love Island talk, come and get involved with us on Twitter at Big at the Back. Yeah, just avoid Love Island.
Love Island garbage on our timeline. It's disgusting.
Obviously, I'm on Twitter at Higgins92. Tom is at TomMadden92. Give us a follow as well. We are a lot more active on the Big at the Back socials, though. So come and get involved. Let us know your thoughts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Hit that notification bell as well so you get notified whenever one of our new videos goes live. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever else you may get your podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you all for listening. We will be back next week.